county governments in the Republic of Kenya, and especially Elgeyo Marakwet County, where I serve as the CEC Finance and Economic Planning, we desire so much to partner with the citizens and the other various arms of the government, including the ones undertaking regulatory authorities over our mandate. For this partnership to thrive, we are cognizant that we must embrace good governance. Today, we have joined hands with IPPK and Center for Innovation on Open Governance to share the best practices in equity.
This discussion, it's a very interesting discussion because what is equitable? Do you just divide the resources to all the wards and you start implementing projects? What are the parameters that we need to consider before doing all these things? So there are so many perspectives, but as Elgeyo Marakwet, we tried a formula, and I think that formula is working. To some point, it has some few challenges. When we talk about taking development down to the ward level, we still have another challenge. As you go down to the smaller units, you face different challenges as you go down. When you go to our wards, you will realize that we usually conduct something called public participation, where these people from the same ward come to one place and they discuss how they share their resources between themselves. We have realized one very serious issue, whereby when you are the host, for example, a sub-location is the host of the public participation process, you end up finding that sub-location getting quite a huge chunk of the money going to that sub-location because majority of the people who participated come from the same location, that place. These resources, as much as we have an equitable formula of taking these resources downwards, what is the best process? How do we take it? Because we can still say, want to take development to every corner of the world, and eventually we take 100,000 to every village. And that 100,000 is not even enough to construct a water tank. So as much as we are discussing that we need to distribute resources equitably, then to what level should we do it? Should we spread thin? Should we target a small, one project in the ward? And again, we target where in the ward that will, or which project that will make everyone feel devolution or feel these resources. So it's a bit complicated, but at least taking the monies to the ward is a start. How we'll use the money within the wards is another issue.
In 2013, when county government started, we experienced a lot of challenges, and I must really appreciate the partnership that we had with our development partners. They supported us through devolution. Most of the gains that we have today is because of their support, and they supported us through the Council of Governors. And one of the main tasks that we had as county governments was to develop our CIDP. When we sat down and costed all the projects that we got from the members of public, we realized that we needed 38 billion Kenya shillings to actualize all the projects in 5 years, from 2013 to 2017. But looking at our budgetary allocation, we realized that we had only 1 billion for development. And we realized that we had a lot of challenges. And that triggered the county assembly to come up with a bill, an Equitable Development Act, which is an act now. And from there, we realized that things were a little bit eased, because we realized that the only way of making our people understand the situation that we were was to involve them in all the things that we are doing as a county. Through this act, 60% of our development budget were shared equally among the 20 wards, and the remainder, the 40%, were shared based on population, of the 40%, 38% was shared based on population. We also had county flagship projects, which we gave them 23%, poverty index 22%, the land area 8%, emergencies, we took 5% of the 40% development to go to emergencies, and fiscal responsibility, and also bearing in mind the diversity of our county. Through this formula, somehow the people of Elgeyo Marakwet are appreciating devolution. I think it's important that today we have other counties to share with us their challenges, their success stories, because I think as we move to the second phase of devolution, we want to learn from our mistakes, learn from our success stories. I want to wish all of us good deliberation as we discuss this important topic of the day. Thank you and God bless you.
So in the grand scheme of things, what is going on in Elgeyo Marakwet can look like a very small thing. Many times what we realize at the International Budget Partnership and colleagues is that a lot of conversations seem to happen at a very high level. And yet where the rubber meets the road, if you put it like that, is actually here. Many times our approach to how we do development can actually look like the story of Tim and Tom, where it's simply, oh, it has worked in that place, let's take it and try it. Without consideration, what is the question? And by question here, I mean what is the need on the ground? So that that answer becomes an answer to an actual need. I will suggest that we do three things this morning and into early afternoon. One, I will suggest that we question our assumptions about inequalities. When we think that inequality is a factor of income, all we do is provide bursaries for students for schools. But it could as well be that it's a nutritional problem that has nothing to do with bursaries, but school feeding programs. But secondly, I will suggest that let us share our perspectives. Because there is no one specific correct perspective. These are just different ways and alternative ways of addressing these things. But lastly, and most important for me, let us energize our interventions. Let this be an opportunity to get encouraged. Let this be an opportunity for us to, as we review the EDA, to go in out there and review it even with more vigor and a sense of energy and passion. Let us go out there, not so much with we are receiving very little money, but a question of how much can we make of what we have, even as we push for much more money.
Devolution, of course, came after a long discussion about how we share revenues as a country. However, just because we introduced devolution into our constitution doesn't mean everything was set. The discussion continues. Now, the discussion is often around how unequal counties are. You compare Migori to Murang'a, Elgeyo Marakwet to Baringo. That discussion is very common. But I want to tell you today that the inequalities that exist among wards are actually worse. So having this discussion around the intra-county distribution of resources is also very useful. However, as we have these discussions and as we think of policies that we can apply as counties so that we make sure we are addressing the inequalities that exist within counties, there are certain general good practices that we have to keep in mind. Now, the first thing that you have to think of is the need. Every county is unique. Even when you come to the county level, every ward is unique. So when you're thinking about the distribution of resources within your county, you're also looking at very unique needs that are spread across the county. Now, our devolution was trying to achieve two things at the same go. Number one, we wanted to bring decision making on how we spend money very close to the people. So that's very important. So the first thing that we have to think about when we are thinking of this principle of need is that we have to make sure that we're able to fund ongoing services. If there's a clinic, we want to make sure that clinic is still able to run. If there's a doctor, I want to make sure that doctor is still paid. But the second objective with devolution was that we were dealing with a lot of marginalization in the country. And so we were looking at devolution as a way out in terms of redistributing our resources. And so the second thing you have to think about need is who is left behind and how do we make sure that we allocate resources in a way that that ward that is behind is able to enjoy the same level of services as the other wards in the county. Now, the second principle that we have to think about is fiscal capacity. Fiscal capacity just simply means how much money are you able to raise on your own as a county. Now, this one might not be a very hot discussion at the ward levels, but definitely among counties is a very hot topic. How much money are you able to raise? Because if you're able to raise more, maybe you're able to fund more of your services than the next county that cannot raise as much. So if we are trying to be fair, then that's one of the things that we have to think about. Now, the challenge, there's a negative incentive to this, as you can quickly tell. Because if I'm going to give you more money because you collect less, you have every reason not to collect a lot. So how do we deal with that negative incentive? It takes me to the third principle, which we call it physical effort. Physical effort simply means, for those who are very prudent in how they use their resources, probably you might think about rewarding them in some way in your distribution factors. Now, the good thing about physical effort is that it takes away how much you collect to how much you grow what you collect. It tells them if you work harder and you're able to collect more, then you will be rewarded for that. So this is something that is very important, especially as we are discussing the county distribution, but also when it comes to the intra-county, there's been a bit of a discussion about whether it should be possible within our county budgets to reward wards where we collect most of our revenues from. Hot topic, but I'll leave it at that. Now, the fourth principle is efficiency. And this is something that has to do more with how much do you produce with the money that you put into certain services, with the money that you put into certain programs. Those who are very efficient in the use of their resources, even in our own household, sometimes end up being the ones that you give most of your money to. Now, this principle is a very risky one. If all of you have heard of the session paper number 10 of 1965, it was pegged on a big way on a principle of efficiency. We believed if we put money in areas that are very productive, we are able to produce way more as a country, then we'll redistribute it to the areas that are low potential. How we applied it definitely did not do that. But efficiency is definitely one thing that we have to consider because we want to make sure we are putting money and we are putting resources that come to the county in a way that they produce to the maximum. And the fifth principle says, regardless of the unique nature in each of the wards that you have, or regardless of the unique nature in each of the counties, that every region requires some minimum share of what we are distributing so that at least they're able to continue providing some level of service. So simply because there's one that is not, looks very rich, or there's a ward that looks like they don't really fit the bill for a lot of resources to go to them, but still they require some minimum allocation that will make sure that they are able to still continue running. The last one, and I think this is the most important one, especially from where I sit, this is a very important one. And this one simply says that regardless of the approach that you take, it has to be done through a fair process. So the sixth principle is basically fair process. Even if you come up with the best formula in the world, and you come up with one that produces the best, makes sure everyone has everything, if the process by which you arrived at that mechanism of distribution is not seen to be fair, then you're in trouble. So the fair process principle is also very important, and that comes in very quickly as we'll be preparing our CIDPs.
I would start by saying a quote by Anthony T. Hincks, okay? So Anthony said, when you are at loss of words, you draw a picture. So each county will form a group. So those are the people from counties, county officials, civil society from those counties, but there are some of us who are not coming from any of these counties. What is going to happen is that we are going to choose the counties that we would like to join. And so the discussion is really about what does inequality look like in our counties. And so that's what the picture that I want us to paint. And I want us to look at three service areas. The first one is roads. how is our road network in the different counties? Okay? The second is access to water. The third one is health. And what I want us to do in the groups, the wards or the part of the county that is poorly developed, we want us to paint it red. Then there's the second part, which is fairly developed. Okay? Not bad as, somewhere else. Then you paint that black. The third one is developed. So I want us to paint that green.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are from Nandi County, and we would wish to give an impression of how our county looks like. So Nandi County has 6 constituencies, and that's why you can see the boundaries. We have Mosop, Chesumei, Mgwen, Aldai, we have Nandi Hills, and Tinderet constituency. What you can see is that around the center, we have a lot of green dominating, because that is where the county headquarters is around. So most of the facilities around are available around the headquarters. And towards the peripheries, that is in Mosop, Tinderet, and some parts of Chesumei, we have a lot of red, meaning that there's a lot that needs to be done towards the end. So generally, we can see that what is dominant in Nandi County is red, because it's available in 3 constituencies. In 3 constituencies, and then you have black in 1 constituency and green in 2 constituencies. So that means that Nandi County still needs to have a lot of focus in terms of distribution of resources.
So in West Pokot, we have 20 wards. We have tried to break it down to the 20 wards. Okay, in terms of constituencies, we have 4 constituencies. That is North Pokot, and then we have Central Pokot, Pokot South on this side, and then West Pokot, that is Kapenguria constituency. In terms of colors, you can see the whole county is predominantly red. That's the entire North Pokot, and then almost half of Central Pokot. And then the county headquarters is located just down here next to Trans Nzoia, that is Kapenguria, and that's where we have some green. The surrounding parts is a mixture of both green and black, denoting some developments, a mixture of least that is fairly developed and developed. So that's what's surrounding the area of Kapenguria. So the entire county is predominantly red, as you can see. Thank you.
So in Baringo County, we have 6 sub-counties. So at the northern part of Baringo County, we have Tiati sub-county, which is the least developed, as marked by red. But again, when it approach urban centers, there is Chemolingot, which is quite developed in terms of road infrastructure. But again, why we chose to mark the whole of the sub-county as underdeveloped is because of issues of access to water and healthcare. Then the next sub-county is Baringo North, where towards the headquarter, Kabarnet and the surrounding wards, it's developed. But then at the borders of Tiati, at the borders of Baringo South, it's quite underdeveloped. Then we have some also a big chunk of the sub-county being fairly developed. Then at the extreme end, Eldama Ravine, just to portray the inequality, Eldama Ravine is fairly, most of the sub-county is developed with good road infrastructure, access to water, with some wards even having up to 85% access to water as per the last KNBS survey. Mogotio has a mixture that is towards Nakuru is fairly developed. At the center, where we have Mogotio town, it is developed, while at the borders of Baringo South, and of course the other side towards Nakuru, it is less developed. Then Baringo South, Baringo South at the center, we have Marigat and the surrounding irrigation schemes. They make the place quite developed, but towards the border of Tiati and Mogotio, it's less developed.
This is Samburu County. You can see we've painted entirely red. Yeah, we are asking for 50 shades of red, but we couldn't get. So just to paint where Samburu County is, we border Turkana on the upper side, Marsabit, Isiolo, Laikipia, and Baringo. We have 3 constituencies in Samburu. We have Samburu West, where the county headquarters is. This is where Maralal is. We have Samburu North. Baragoi is famously known here. We have Samburu East, where Wamba is, Wamba sub-county. We have 0% tarmac road. As you can see, there's no road at all. Luckily, Lapset passed here from Isiolo through going to Marsabit. So this is the only place you can say a road is tarmacked in Samburu County by luck or something. The entire place is not tarmacked. A road was recently launched here that's supposed to go to Maralal, but it was launched by first Moi, Kibaki, and recently Uhuru also launched. So we don't know who will ever implement it. In terms of healthcare, we have only 2 main hospitals. Wamba Mission Hospital, which was built by missionaries, and Maralal Referral Hospital, poorly equipped. This is the government-owned hospital. This is much better because it's owned by missionaries. Right now, the county government has a little share. In Baragoi, we don't have an hospital at all. Here, actually, this is where we border Tiati. For Baringo people, we border Tiati constituency here. And on the other side, we border Turkana, a lot of cattle rustling and all that. We have 16 wards. This little green here is a ward called Losuk Ward and Poro Ward, where agriculture happens. And this is where we have a little water, but not piped or anything, just by God's own ways. We have streams and rivers. We only have 1 dam in Maralal that supplies water to the county headquarters that was constructed during the colonial times. The county government recently launched another dam, and that's the only water we have. Other parts, there's no borehole, there's really nothing. So Samburu County is definitely just red. Thank you.
This is Turkana County. We have 7 sub-counties. In terms of roads, we have passable roads. Those are the feeder roads that was maintained by the county government. But the national government, we only have 1 road that is beginning from Mombasa to Southern Sudan, cutting across the county. On the side of health facilities, the county really have tried their best by building every financial year 2 dispensaries per ward. So the problem is now manpower to some wards, unreachable wards. When the county maybe tries to advertise some jobs, maybe especially for nurses, when somebody got a job and went there and accessed the area, he or she may decide to quit because of the conditions of the area. So on the side of water again, the country has tried their best by drilling every financial year 2 boreholes. But the problem is most of the people in the county, they are nomads or pastoralists. You can decide to maybe to drill a borehole here. In 2 weeks or 3 weeks, people may migrate looking for greener pastures. Then that borehole will just left there for nobody to use. Thank you.
In Busia County, we've got 7 sub-counties. As you can see, Teso North is painted red. It is the worst actually in terms of development, because when we looked at the 3 parameters, roads, water, and health facilities, Teso North almost came last in all of them. That's why it is painted in red. If you look at the 6 are fairly developed, and we did ranking in terms of, for example, roads. We looked at the tarmac roads and all-weather roads. And in terms of roads, Bunyala came as the first one, Matayos was the second, Butla was the third, Samia, Nambale, Teso South, and then Teso North last. In terms of water, we were looking at how the distance that the households cover to get water, and the presence of water sources, because like in Teso North, even getting water is a problem. The county has tried to drill boreholes, but when it comes to the dry seasons, the boreholes dry up. So in terms of water, Matayos was the best. Nambale, Teso South, Butla, Samia, Teso North, and Bunyala. In terms of health facilities, Matayos was the best because it's in town, and we were looking at the quality of the health services, the distribution of health workers, and also the impact that the prominent politicians had. So again, Matayos was the best, Teso South was the second, Bunyala was third, Butla fourth, Nambale fifth, Teso North, and then Samia.
So this is our map. We have 6 sub-counties. Our green area is the northern part of the county. Like here in Elgeyo, we have 3 ecological zones. We have the northern, the middle, and the lower. You look at the 3/4 of the lower is almost red. Other than the AO1, Nairobi-Mombasa Road is here and here. But again, we have hope. Dwake Dam is here around Makueni County. The headquarters is here. So when Dwake Dam is done, then it can supply water to the rest of the county. Here, the upper region is where we have Kilome sub-county is the richest sub-county. The richest ward is from Kaiti. So they all come from the northern part. The poorest ward comes from Makueni, this side where Dwake is being done. And the poorest sub-county is Kibwezi East, the lower region. So that is what we had. Thank you.
Looking at Elgeyo Marakwet in terms of the parameters, we only found 2 extreme, averagely, on health in the entire county. We are at black, which means we are closer to being developed in terms of health. But in the water sector, we realized that a lot needs to be done, because in most of the areas, we had like red, apart from the sub-county headquarters and those neighboring the sub-counties and those areas with good water sources, that we had what was ideal. In terms of roads, we found Kamarin Ward, which is within the headquarters, where we are in Iten, is closer to developed in terms of roads because most of the roads are passable and motorable. But we found in Soy South and Soy North, Emsoa, Lelan, Aror, and Endo, which are the extreme. This is Sengwer, this is Endo, and then we have Aroria, and Soy North and Soy South. We are at red in terms of roads. And one of the challenges in terms of our road networks in these wards where we put red is that it receives K South and Soy North is in the lower escarpment. So when it rains on the islands, all the water from the islands sweep away all our roads. And that is the state of Elgeyo Marakwet. And I think we are learning something. If resources are to be put into use to kill this inequality, then we need to target Aror, Sengwer, Soy North, and Soy South in the county in terms of water and road network for this county to be equal in terms of resource distribution. That is what we have to say as Elgeyo Marakwet County Government, as Andeni Sana.
The gentleman and lady in front of us are people who play a critical role when it comes to thinking about how we develop our counties. And I'll start from West Pokot. My question is very simple. What have we been doing to try and address some of the challenges that we were able to identify in these maps?
West Pokot, as you had been shown, from time immemorial, we have encountered several problems, several issues that border around inequalities. As a county, you realize that from the session paper of 1965, development was kind of preferred on areas that had potential in development. So all the resources were pumped onto those areas, leaving out West Pokot. Again, an issue of closed district came in during colonialization, and therefore our district was marginalized. We begin now planning for ourselves, looking at what we did not have vis-a-vis what we had. So as a county government now, we decided to put in place policies that would address those issues. One of those issues, of course, is, drought and famine, issues to do with negative cultures that really affected our people from going to school, having our kids, the girls getting married off early, and therefore issues to do with insecurity came up, and the county governments have been doing a lot in terms of trying to address those issues. You realize that with the new county government now, the Governor West Pokot decided just to summarize all those issues into 3 and said that in order to address these issues, we look only at 3 things. That is 3 E's: education, economy, and equity. And lucky enough, today we are talking about equity. So in terms of education, the county government has decided to put up schools strategically along the borders so that those war-prone borders in Uganda, a school called Katikomor, in Kulo, we have a school, we are putting up a school there. So to address the challenges that we are looking at. In terms of insecurity issues, we are also partnering with our friendly counties, including Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, and our friends from Uganda, to see to it that all those areas that suffered marginalization in terms of insecurity are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question goes to Priska. Now, of course, as we saw in the map, I think Busia's map is also somewhere up, is that definitely the county is not developed in any standardized, equitable way. And I think the privilege for you is that you've been in the county for some time. What would you say has been a big challenge, or what have been some of the challenges that you've seen that have driven the county to have that kind of map, and how have you tried to address them as a county government?
Yes, Busia, from our presentation, is not that developed. We've seen one sub-county having been, actually turning out to be the last in terms of development. And then you also have one sub-county which turned out to be the most developed, and the other 5 having been fairly developed. When the counties came into being, in fact, in their first budget, the county assembly felt we could not continue the way the budget had been developed, because it had been developed using what the departments had submitted. So when they looked at that budget, they were not happy with how the resources had been shared, and they decided, no, we have to do something to help sub-counties like Teso North and the others. So what they do, they started the process of coming up with the Busia County Ward Development Fund Act, which was approved in 2014. I think it was assented by the governor on 30th of January, and it was to start operating from 4th of February. But because of the restrictions by the control of budget, that act has not been implemented to date. So the county executive and the membership of the county assembly sat down, and they agreed on a formula of sharing resources. In this formula, after removing the recurrent bit of the budget, that is the salaries and other recurrent items, whatever was remaining out of the development, they had to set aside, they agreed that 700 million be set aside. And the 700 million was to be shared equally among the 35 wards that we have in Busia County. And then now the remaining budget, after the 700 million has been set aside, was to be shared among the departments according to needs, of course, after doing the public participation. That has been the case since devolution up to now. But part of the reason why I'm here today is actually to learn from Elgeyo Marakwet, because if you look at their act, it is actually fair, and it's sharing these resources equitably as opposed to equally in Busia County.
I think you're the first county person I've met who said we shared things equally and that was wrong. So that's progress. Now, let me move to Bwana Karanja. I think the last I heard is that Makueni has borrowed something from Elgeyo Marakwet as well. Can you paint for us a picture of what you had in your map and how it drove you to thinking we can borrow something from Elgeyo Marakwet? And how do you see that? And how did you actually arrive at thinking that the parameters in there could address some of the challenges in your county?
Thank you for that question. I think maybe starting from where we started as Makueni in 2013-14 through our governor, we were not looking only on the aspect of geographical, but we were also looking on the aspect of inclusiveness in our participation, or even in our budget process. In this regard, even in our that awards, even if we set a certain figure, like now we started with 18 million per ward, and then we increased to 17, 18, 30 million per ward. But besides that, we brought the other aspect of increasing the various vulnerable groups, and that is bringing the aspect of inclusiveness, whereby beside the figures that we are giving to the specific wards, we have specific participations for various thematic groups, that is the PWDs, OVCs, youth, women, and all that, so that at least their effects can be felt in the budget. Looking at our map, when we started the county, our poverty rate was at 64%. And that drove us to us developing what we call the Vision 2025. Makueni, we launched our Vision 2025, which is aimed at ensuring economic transformation of the economy of the citizenry. I think we are aiming at ensuring each household has 500 shillings by the year 2025. We want to get to 2030 before. That has been our aim. But how has been our petition been, or how has been our budgets been? We have a model, a participation model, which we started in 2013-14. We have continued improving. In 2013-14, 14-15, we have main focus on the wards. In 15-16, we promoted to the sub-wards. Each and every of our wards is divided into 2 sub-wards. So, and then in 16-17, we went again to the villages. So we start our process of participation from the village. We have 3,455 villages. And then what normally happens, we look, when we hold participation of those villages, the first thing is to document the resources that they have and the development activities that are there, the challenges. And then they propose solutions towards solving those. And then we group villages to what we call village clusters. There are 252 village clusters. Again, at those village clusters, the various villages bring their proposals, and then as a village cluster, they deliberate and prioritize the proposals that have to be funded based on the area investments and the level of development in those areas. And then from the village clusters, we go to the sub-wards. Again, various village clusters, around 5, come together. They bring their reports together, they list all their projects, and again they reprioritize again on the basis of all those things, the previous investments, what the issues that they are, and then we finalize on the ward. That is the final level. So at the ward level, at least the projects that are prioritized, they came from the villages, but the prioritization is based on how the various areas have been developed. That has all been a structure. And then now going forward, borrowing from Elgeyo Marakwet, we decided, we had proposed in 17-18 we had proposed a resource allocation criteria, which was focusing on population, poverty, rural area, the fiscal effort based on how each and every area collects a revenue, and then the aspect of the development factor. This is on regard to the access to water, electricity, and health, and now roads. But because of politics, we decided now it's good we come and deliberate this year, so that at least now moving forward we can be able to really apportion it. But again, how we usually do it and how we develop it, we cluster our development into two. We have the ward quarter, the headquarter in the ward. Like now, we started with 30% going to the ward. Currently, we are at 40%. And the headquarter projects are basically for the ones to cover the thematic groups and the flagship projects identified in the Vision 2025. I think that has been our process. Yes.
Thank you. It's really nice to hear about the process of public identification of projects. But before we come back to that, Maritime, as I come to you, I think His Excellency the Governor explained how the Equitable Development Act in Elgeyo works. But I want to throw you a little bit into the fire and ask, what have been the downsides of that formula? What has not worked so well? As you hear, everyone is trying to learn from you. They can learn the good things. Papers have been written on those. But what are the pitfalls that you've seen as you implemented your EDA that you would say these are some of the things that we've seen that other counties can avoid as they also think of coming up with these mechanisms?
We've observed several challenges since 2014-15 when we started to implement this. And one of those is, yes, we've divided monies equitably to the wards. And then we've told them now, this ward, you have, let's say, 40 million. Inside, you've arrived for the public participation. Now, the public will not probably, we don't have a limit of projects that money can do. So we've observed a lot of spread of a lot of projects like the Deputy Governor highlighted earlier. So there's a very thin spread of projects. When we analyze the impacts, then we feel like it's many years to complete one project. So then you will have a project that has phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, even phase 4. It takes 4 years for the benefits to be felt. Then secondly, the flagship project, because we have parameters, including allocation for flagship projects, which these are projects whose impacts can be felt across wards. Yeah, they don't have, if it is a dam, then that dam's benefit is not only confined to that ward which is located. So then we felt that 9.2% of the budget going to a flagship project, we feel it's a very, very small amount given the impact that we want such projects to generate. And then we also feel that although we've enhanced public participation and the public have confidence that whatever they say is going to be funded, we also feel that the locations of, because the biggest challenge again of this is we cannot do public participation up to the lowest bit. I know Makueni has acceded to go to the sub-location. But for us, the farthest we've gone is the wards. And they usually, when we take this money now, say 40 million for a ward, most people will attend that public participation are probably people from the area, the location of the public participation. So then representation in terms of regions, in terms of the segments of the population, women, youth, and people, the old people, the issues will be will go down. And if there was any argument to be voted on that money, then probably the bigger population of the room will carry the day. And then now, the big issue, the biggest challenge now is how do we decide this 40 million to be divided in the regions inside the wards? So although we pride in having succeeded in taking monies to the wards, we don't have a framework that distributes money inside the wards.
The one thing that I've noticed across all the counties is that when we're discussing equitable distribution of resources, many a times it seems to be locked into the development projects angle. Now, as we think of the policies that we're discussing going forward and the solution to some of the challenges we've seen, are we spreading the equitable distribution discussion beyond projects or beyond what Priska called the CDF angle? Are we thinking of programs that are recurrent sometimes in nature as also going into this discussion? just beyond the projects? Maybe we can start with you, Priska.
Yes, we're also thinking about distribution beyond the development projects. Because let me give you a practical angle of what is happening in Busia currently. Is that if you look at our budgets, for example, in the last 2 years, okay, let me say 14, 15, 15, 16, for example. You look at how the budgets have been done, they've been done according to departments. They're not looking at the directorates. So what we are trying to do to improve that is that going forward, maybe we should start doing budgets while looking at the directorates, because if you lump a department together, for example, you look at water, environment, and natural resources. If you look, there are chances of the Department of Water taking a huge chunk of that budget, and the other directorates of environment and forests, for example, are left out, or they're given that which is not even sufficient for them to do something that is meaningful. So,
sorry, just to jump in.
Yes.
Do we have discussions within these sectors and these full departments? Do we have discussions as to why one directorate should get an X amount and the next one should get a Y amount of money? Or is that all decided elsewhere, they just come to you for implementation?
Okay, practically in Busia, the ceilings, for example, are set at the executive committee level and the county assembly level. So when it gets to the departmental level, it depends more on what is it that is going to benefit the common mwananchi more. So if you look at forests and versus water, priority will be given to water, forgetting that you need to protect this water by giving more resources to forests, because it's from the forest that we get water. So the discussion majorly takes place at the executive level, but we are coming up with sector working groups to ignite this discussion now at the departmental level too.
When you look at what the people want and what the county is supposed to do in terms of trying to alleviate or bring about development in an account, for instance, you also need to go beyond development issues. For example, in West Pokot, we have to really fast deal with the aspects of capacity building, look on how you can help these people themselves understand and be able to participate fully on these project issues. Maybe invest on research so that if there is a place that would require much more funding, then that would be the place to put that money.
Now, for Makueni, as we move into and learn what Elgeyo Marakwet has done over the years that the EDA has been in place, are we going to see an Equitable Development Act from Makueni that has something beyond just the development budget?
Okay, thank you. Maybe as we continue to improve the process, as we continue to learn, I think also we are asking the question we are asking the basic question is, we have invested, like now we did analysis since when we started. Each and every ward in Makueni has received a minimum of 100 million Kenya shillings. But now we are focusing and asking ourselves, is this really 100 million, with us investing the 100 million shillings, has really it improved the welfare of the citizenry? Has the access to water, the access and all those issues? Or do we need to also to continue the small projects? And now we wanted to take it a notch higher and try to one, capacity build the communities on the aspect of participation. At each and every level from the village, we have what we call village development committees. We want to make this participation as a continuous process. Let them meet at their own, discuss the development issues, so that when we meet at the budgeting, at least they have already synchronized, they have met with the respective technical departments, and they can be able to develop proposals that are more objective and more so go towards directing or solving the various issues that they have. Now, on the aspect of prioritization of the resources, I think other than when we go to the participation, we don't indicate or define the department to which the project has to be. We guide the communities towards developing proposals irrespective of which department. In other instances, you will see in areas where we don't have water, they can prioritize all projects water. That one we don't really fix them. But when we come to the headquarters, we look at the key priority areas that can be used or can be implemented to trigger development in the other areas. And I think the question should be also focusing on, yes, we are equitably distributing these resources to the wards, but is there anything, can we change the way we design our projects so that we can even implement a project in a certain ward, but cater for the challenges that are in the other ward?
Maritim, now coming back to where you had stopped. Now, as we know, the development budget in many counties is not that big. When you look at it in terms of the proportion of the total budget, it's quite small. And as we discuss equity, then we are thinking of equity in terms of the whole budget. Now, to poke this a little bit, so is this a direction in which we are seeing the new EDA go as we solve some of the challenges that you mentioned?
Yes. In addressing most of the challenges that I highlighted earlier, back in March this year, the Assembly, our county assembly called for amendment or submissions as executive for the amendment of the law. And in our submissions, we didn't dwell only on the development. I'm happy you asked about, is equity only in the development allocations? So in that amendment, we sought to address three things. One is we sought to take the equity practice also to touch on the human resources. If you take, for example, the Department of Health, although we don't have the optimum level of staff that we want to have to deliver the health services, we've said that once we know the status of a health facility, if it's a dispensary, health center, level 4, level 5, then we know the ideal number of staff who should be serving in those facilities. So even if we don't employ new ones, we know the existing ones, how many should be in facility A, how many should be in facility B. So in that amendment that we submitted to the Assembly, we dwell so much on look, we've done very well in allocating resources to building of health facilities. Let's say they're identified as a priority. The health facility is complete, but we are unable to send an health practitioner because they love to be in Iten or another urban center. Yeah. So to address that, we say we'll want to follow the personnel with the priority that the public identified, and that is the directions that we are getting to. And I've just used deployments. In the same law, we're even looking at the recruitment, the equity in recruitment. I know it's already in practice at the level of the CECs, chief of staff going down, but you go to the middle level staff, we still feel like going forward, we have to do some equitable practice within staff. We also looked at one of the challenges that I didn't highlight is that with the coming of the Equity Development Act, the role of the sectors, of the role of our technical staff, seemingly was given to the public, which is not true. Yeah, because when we go to the public participation and a member of the public says we want water as our priority, then our staff needs now to highlight to them to say, look, you people, according to our statistical analysis and the indicator base, you don't need water as your priority. You need probably agriculture. And that is the directions that we are taking in terms of this amendment. So that in the amendment, we are saying the technical people need to be providing up-to-date statistical indicators that will guide the members of the public to choose the right priorities, so that there is no subjectivity, there is no emotional decisions that are there.
But do we have that data? Do we have the systems in place to collect that information?
That's the biggest challenge that we have. Our governor earlier highlighted that today we have a statistical day across the country, and we have a function. And we met with them earlier in the week, and we said although the data management is still under the control of the national government, could we establish our own statistical offices within counties so that whenever KNBS is undertaking any survey of some sort of census, then the indicators that suit our practices that we want to adopt and the law can be incorporated. So that next time, for example, in 2019, there soon KNBS is going to undertake the census. And in that census, the questionnaire could probably include the poverty indicators, the access to facilities and all that, which is very relevant to the discussion that we have today. So we don't have an active one, but we work closely with KNBS in the run-up to establishing our own and probably use it to make decisions going forward. Thirdly, the main content of our amendment, it's also good because so that other counties don't start from where we started in 2014, they start from where we are in the amendment stage, is we are looking at the weights of the parameters used in the distributions. I know you highlighted earlier about the principles of equity. That knowledge we didn't have in 2014 when we were doing the EDA. So now that with all this knowledge, the interactions and the various practices that all the other counties are doing, then we can agree how much weight should go to population, how much weight should go to poverty, how much weight should go to maybe arid and semi-arid or access to facilities parameter. So in that amendment, we did a lot of consultations, we did a lot of analysis, helped by yourself, IPP, helped by the KNBS, and many other partners. And we believe that the new parameters portray the kind of equity that we are seeking to achieve.
When we speak about equity, we know when it comes to budget work, the county assembly plays a critical role of approving budgets. So how did Elgeyo Marakwet come to convince members of county assembly to pass an equity law that would, because in our county in Baringo, the executive is having challenge to convince the county assembly that there is need for equity law that would see some counties, some wards receive lesser allocation as to what they are receiving currently.
And I actually want to say that this is an act which started from the county assembly. It was sponsored by the former member of county assembly of Kaptarakwa ward, and it came as a result of an equal distribution of resources from our first financial year. When we did our budgets, 2013-2014 financial year, we realized that we could not balance the county the way it is required because, one, we were new and we didn't have all the information about these counties. So my suggestion is that what needs to be done is the county executive, county assembly, together with the citizens of the county should sit down, identify their needs in a roundtable meeting. And I believe what we've done today is actually what we should be taken to the next level. The charts which we painted today, I think that should be the starting point. Let the citizens, the members of county assembly, the governor and all the executive sit down, waweke, they prioritize areas which need development in the county, and then from there, because I believe even without the act, so long as the three teams, the citizens, the executive and county assembly sit together, they will be able to come out with a very nice way of ensuring that there is equity in the county.
One, I wanted to suggest on working the good relationship with the county government and the public. Now that we are realizing some of the counties are missing even their staffs from the counties, that is another challenge. Whereby when they are coming up with their budget, there is no representation of maybe areas like the sectors that are supposed to be working. So I'm suggesting there should be good working relationship between the county government and the public or the citizen. Actually, it is public participation is key there.
How do we let the members of public appreciate equity? And I must say that there are a number of challenges, because as much as we try to ensure that there is equity, there are also those people who are, or their needs which will not be catered for. And for example, Elgeyo Marakwet, the biggest challenge we've been having is, why is it that Elgeyo Marakwet doesn't have big projects like other counties? And that comes as a result of trying to ensure that there is equity at the expense of flagship projects. Because I think when you look at other counties, they've done big projects, but Elgeyo Marakwet, we've tried to reach every corner, and that thinly spreading has affected the flagship projects. So I think there is a lot of, we need to have a lot of engagements so that it reaches a point that even the members of public are the ones who prioritize flagship project rather than every village having their own project.
My question goes to His Excellency the Governor. My question is, what are you doing in partnership with the governors from Baringo and Turkana to make sure that more resources are allocated to the marginalized areas, so that this question of cattle rustling is forgotten?
What are we doing as governors from the region where cattle rustling is? And I want to say that I think apart from Makueni and Busia counties, all the other members, counties who are invited today are members of the NOREP, the North Rift Economic Bloc. And part of the discussions that we always have at NOREP is how do we finish this cattle rustling, because it's impacting negatively on our region. Because when you talk about North Rift, even I think when you mentioned about Nandi in Nairobi, somebody will easily say that the county where cattle rustling or where Pokot and Marakwet are fighting for cows. So we need, we put it as a priority in NOREP that we, first of all, we must ensure that Kerio Valley is safe. And again, the reason why we have cattle rustling is because of the level of development in these areas. So we are trying as in NOREP to push counties to put more development in these areas, at the same time lobbying together as NOREP counties to ensure that national government prioritize these areas in terms of resource allocation, development of infrastructure.
Secondly, second question is, the reason why devolution was started was so that we have more resources for development. Now, we have realized in most counties in Kenya, there is more people employed, so that more money is used in the paying staff. That one we can call, we used to say, we have more cooks than the sufurias. What are you doing in the Council of Governors to make sure that you have reduced the wage bill in the counties? Thank you.
The last question was about the wage bill, which I believe it's a nightmare in every county. Every time we try to balance our budgets, there's a problem. And a good example, Elgeyo Marakwet, at the moment, we don't have enough staff in our departments. You'll find a department that has a chief of CEC, a chief officer, a director, and that's the end of it. Because we are not able to employ more because of the wage bill. And I think this is something which the national government should have really assisted us, especially in 2013. Because as you know, when we came in 2013, all of us knew that we could just pick the number of staff we are able to work with, then we release the others to national. Or even a function we are not able to cater for the wage bill of that function, we leave it to national government. And I think where we have challenges in all the counties is health. Health, I think in Elgeyo Marakwet, out of a budget of about 3.8 billion, 1 billion and about 44 million goes to health. We've not touched any other department. So I think it's a discussion that cannot even be finished at the Council of Governors level. It has to be discussed at the summit. And I think we've been having challenges sometimes. In our last term, we were not able to deliberate on some issues at the summit because of several misunderstandings. But we believe that moving forward, we'll be able to sit down and see how we can approach this. And I think the other challenge has been also, you know, when the retirement age was pushed from 55 to 60, then another challenge came at that point. So I think it's a whole discussion that needs all of us to put our heads together. And again, I think that is where now the issue of even the formula, because sometimes when you see reports in the media that Elgeyo Marakwet has put a lot of money in salaries, and you realize that maybe we are only paying, using about 2 billion for salaries, but another county which uses up to 6 billion, for them it's okay because their percentage compared to what they receive, the percentage is still low. But for Elgeyo Marakwet, because we receive about 3.5 billion, so it means that almost everything goes to wage bill. So that again poses a challenge to small counties like Elgeyo Marakwet. But I believe it's something which it's one of the priority lists at the Council of Governors, and will ensure that I think on Monday we're having our induction, and these are some of the things that we are going to prioritize in our discussion. Thank you so much.
When we began, and I remember Governor asking, what is equity? And Rugo trying to answer with the Tim Tom story on why are we here, isn't it? All right? We realize that most of us actually do know why we're here. And these maps that we've had today show that we are actually aware that there are inequalities within our counties and even across counties, right? So that's one thing that we have learned today, that we are aware and people are doing things about it. We have had Elgeyo Marakwet with their EDA, we have had counties trying to deal with their inequalities. We have also learned that there is need to interrogate more how we are dealing with inequalities, right? Because we're saying that we do appreciate that the wards, for example, are not equal, but are our policy interventions dealing with those problems, okay? So one thing that I would assume, and Rugo said let's interrogate our assumptions, is that all of us know that counties have scarce resources. That point cannot be overemphasized. Counties have scarce resources. So where best can they put these resources to deal with their inequalities? That's a question that we have not answered today fully, and we have to keep asking. With the scarce resources we have, where do we put them, okay? So those are some of the things that we have learned today. But I just wanted to raise 5 questions that for us to go and think about, even after this session. One thing I noticed from the maps is that we were saying that the developed areas were near urban areas, isn't it? Everyone came saying, near Marigat, in Matayo, that's where it's developed, so we'll mark it green. But I want us to be aware of another principle that we haven't highlighted today, and that is holding harmless. And as much as we are trying to develop other areas, we must be aware as citizens, as stakeholders, as politicians, that we also have to maintain certain services. So let's not do harm while we are trying to do good, okay? So that's one thing for us to think about. It's not just about not developing the areas we think that are very developed, but also ensuring that also these areas don't go down because we'll be undoing what we've already done. Another thing is the issue of equality and equity. while I appreciate that all of us understand that we are not equal, most of our interventions are leaning towards equality. And we've had examples from Busia and Makueni that in as much as they're including everyone, they still distribute 100 million per ward. They still give the same amount of money per ward. So what are we doing? And even for EDA, which is a good legislative instrument, it still gives 60% to equality. So we need to start interrogating. Yes, we have inequalities, but are we really distributing our resources, appreciating that inequality, or are we just giving equal to everyone? And I know Samburu is the only county that can safely say that we're going to give equally, but still there are inequalities there. I will see small little blues there. But the question is, we cannot resort to equality in distribution of resources while claiming we're being more equitable. All right? So that's one thing to think about. And this is also for the citizens to understand. It's not fair when every ward is given the same amount of money, because we have different needs and we have different capacities. The last thing I want to emphasize is the issue of coordination, communication, and deliberations. We realize that there are different ways of dealing with inequalities. And everyone kept saying, there's no best way to deal with this. There's no right way to deal with this. So there has to be some discussion, okay? And this is where the issue of data comes. When we are saying we are having discussions about inequalities, are we appreciating the differences fully? Or are we just saying, we know the valley is disadvantaged, just give them more money. How are they disadvantaged? What can we deal with first? How much do we have to deal with that? What is the best way to deal with it? And that's a question of research. Like, if the best way to deal, and I was in the Busia group, and I had them saying that we have put boreholes to address the issue of water, but those boreholes are dry when it's dry season. That's something to think about. And maybe this is being pushed by citizens. We want health facilities behind my compound, but where are the health workers? So we also need to refine our development strategies. What is our theory of change? If we have clarity of that, we sit down and discuss. We want to resolve inequalities, but what is informing it? DI has done good work on data within counties, showing what are the inequalities. So we have to keep interrogating how best do we deal with them. And that cannot just be based on, we feel, Maritim said, we don't want people to make emotional decisions. We feel that we're disadvantaged. All of us feel marginalized. If you ask someone, they're like, we have been marginalized for a very long time. But it has to be based on something. Let us have meaningful engagements. And my final remark would be that everyone has a role to play. We have seen county assemblies coming up with legislative tools that improve equitable distribution of resources, and kudos to the former MCA, who's also my friend. We've seen county executives following it through. We are implementing this. We are ensuring that there is public participation, and even coming up with proposals, because they're the ones who are working, right? They can tell you what you need is not a borehole. What you need is piping from wards, the other one, you know? So that's the role of the executive, to help citizens understand this, what you would otherwise think are technical issues, okay? And academia, we've had the role of everyone. Kibet said CSOs, you're doing social audits. Can this inform something, policy making, all right? So we all have something to play. Even for partners, can we have coordinated development, all right? Can we all deal with inequality in a way that is coordinated? So everyone has a role to play, and even as we go out this afternoon, ask yourself, the ladies from Samburu, what am I doing to improve the situation in Samburu? Do I have the data for Samburu? Where can I get it? Who do I approach? Do I talk to the county assembly? Do I talk to the county executive? So that we start moving forward as opposed to just talking.